you all for being here. This class is part of AMP's online masterclass series sponsored by the Chestnut Family Foundation. This class is part of a larger series, and this class is actually part 4 of a 4-part series. This is Grace Kim's scales and exercises for advanced violin. And so this is part 4 of a 4-part class, and we'll have lots of other master classes to come. All these classes will also be on YouTube, on our AMP's YouTube channel, open to the public. You can also find more information about this class and other classes on our Facebook page and through our email blast. We've got links for all of our classes, our upcoming classes. For everyone joining us, feel free to send us messages in the chat, to ask any questions using the Q&A function, ask a question in the chat. Grace may also periodically ask questions for the audience members if you want to answer. And yeah, we're going to be featuring some of our AMP students in these classes. So you'll see some students playing and demonstrating concepts that Grace covers. And I hope you all enjoy the class.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Lolly. I'm glad to see you guys all back this week. Today, I want to talk mainly about Mazza's Opus 36 Etude number 18. So I'm going to go ahead and start with playing with that. But before I start that, I wanted to mention a few things that I want to talk about during this master class. So in this etude, we have a lot of technical ideas that are coming up in here. Some things that I wanted to hit today were zigzag bowing, or bow traveling, or Z bow. We'll talk about that. Clean string crossings, double stops, going from arco to pits seamlessly as possible. I talked about shifts in a previous masterclass, but there's a lot of shifting in this etude. I wanted to mention hand frame again. I know we talked about that from the first masterclass about how to make a good tone and how important it is to have a really strong foundation for a hand frame, no matter what position we are in. There's a lot of tenuto markings in this etude. I want to mention sound points again and how to use rests. All right, so what is pulled up is what I call my bad copy of just learning through an etude. So here it goes.
Beautiful.
Thank you guys. All right, so lots of things to work on this etude. I would first of all like to start off with some zigzag bowings. We find this part especially at the end of the etude, but you can use zigzag bowing in so many different pieces. When you play anything, you look at a measure and you might say, I would like to start this beat on near the frog. So I need to make sure that the music before that helps me get to the frog as well, unless you have a rest, which in case you have that, you can set your bow on. And vice versa. Sometimes you want to be in the upper half, but you are down in the frog. How do I kind of zigzag or shimmy my way up to where I want to be into a desirable place of the bow? So we're going to try a really easy exercise. We're going to start with E major scale. It's on that handwritten PDF that I sent in the email package. But students, if you guys want to try this, what I would like for us to try, and I will demonstrate first, and you can try it on an open string first. I always love accessing any technique with an open string, if possible. I know that there are no shortcuts in learning the violin, but if there ever were a shortcut, I would say it's practicing your technique on open strings. It's the easiest, fastest, simplest way to access a technique into your hands and your body. So let's set a goal. Let's say that I want to start E major at the frog, and I'm going to end up at the tip for the top of the scale. And then I'm going to shimmy my way back down to the frog. So this is going to be our zigzag bowing or traveling bow or Z bow. So it would look like. So did everyone see that? I started off at the frog, and then I ended up at the tip for the top of the E major scale, and then went back down to the frog. You might have also noticed that my sound didn't change. My goal is that it didn't change at all, that all the strokes sound very even. However, I'm being sneaky. When I'm starting at the frog, traveling to the tip, obviously my down bows are going to travel longer and lighter, and my up bows are going to travel less, but a slower, denser bow to even out the usage of bow. So again, and if I did it on open strings, then you end up where you want. So would anyone like to demonstrate with open strings or preferably E major scale what I just demonstrated? Do we have any volunteers?
Anybody can raise your hands. in Zoom if you want to play. All right, we've got Donovan. Awesome. Hey, Donovan.
Hey. I guess I'll start real quick then, yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe I should stand up, huh?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, my bad.
You're fine.
Okay. So let's start at the frog and end up at the tip. Good. How about this time we use a little bit shorter bow? So I want you to use about that long of a bow, like 1/8 of your bow, or about like 1/4 of your bow at a time. I love how much bow you're using, but in this exercise, let's try to use little bits of bow so that we're shimmying down and shimmying up. Okay, let's try that again. Excellent. And now let's try to use open string. Let's pick A and use really little bow, and we're going to be sneaky and use exactly from the frog all the way to the tip. So it's going to look like this. And we'll end up at the tip, okay? So let's use like about 4 inches of bow at a time. Good, good, excellent. So that was a great demonstration of traveling bow. So you can use that in your other pieces, and same vice versa. You can do it upside down in your practicing, starting from the tip, going to the frog. And depending on how long the notes are short they are, that kind of dictates how long your bow travel will be. Thank you, Donovan. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is Arco. Can you guys hear me all right?
We can hear you, yeah. You're good.
Okay, so, okay, thanks. Another thing I want to talk about in this piece is Arco going into pits, going back into Arco. Sometimes we have these like crazy things in orchestral music that it's like, something like that. I did not start off like this. It wasn't as graceful as I am doing it right now. So again, we can use open strings or we can use E major scale. So we can try this exercise like. So I want to give you a close-up of what my hand looks like, because it's that transition that is a little bit awkward, right? So I'm playing, and then I curl my bow to have the hair completely facing me. So if you can do this, you can get to where we want to be. And you can also grab a pencil, and if you can roll it in your fingers, that's basically the motion that we're doing. So. And I'll show you from this side. So would someone like to try that exercise?
Who wants to put their hand up in the, there we go, Donovan again. And let us know in the chat if you want to be the one to play after Donovan next time. All right, Donovan was muted. No, he should be good.
frog. Actually, you're doing a good job at getting up on an up bow. Yes, violinists, we naturally usually like to get on an up bow to help us travel to the frog. Another thing I want to mention is that whenever we set the bow, like we set the bow, we like to set our fingers on the string. So let's try to be accurate and rhythmic about that. Let's try it again. So like keep that rhythm going. Very good. Thank you, Donovan. Another thing I want to talk to you about is, to everyone, is about tenuto. So tenuto is like holding a note. It's like an articulation, form of articulation for violinists. It's not, it's away from staccato. So staccato, you have spaces and attacks, little attacks, but tenuto is like, really filling in the spaces. In this etude, we have a lot of tenutos that are on a legato, on a slur. And when you have that, we do not separate it. So just to give you an example, and we'll go through this etude together. Sorry. So when we're doing it with open strings, kind of sounds like that. I want you to imagine it like you are, if you had a roll of dough and you're making little impressions in your dough. So you're not separating and cutting the dough, but you're putting in impressions into the dough. All right. So let's go into our etude. So when you begin, I talked about this last week, but I want you to choose a rhythm before you even start. This is great even at the audition. Try to be calm and gather your thoughts and just take a few seconds, 3 seconds, to just run through the beginning of your etude and just breathe. Also, another thing that's really helpful is on the all-state audition information packet, they ask you to play this with the 8th note to 138. That's a great tempo and metronome marking to practice with. I also recommend you to try, if you divide 138 by 3, you get the dotted quarter note rhythm, which is 46. So that feels really different. So 46 sounds like this. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. So that's a totally different feel than 138, which sounds like this. So I hope you become really good friends with your metronome during this quarantine, and you will, it feels easier to play with a bigger beat, but I encourage you to try to have rhythmic integrity by practicing with the small beats at first. All right, so starting with the first measure, there's a shift in that first measure that might be a little bit awkward. This is an E major. We're not playing on the E string. This is a great time to use the E as a drone. So we can play. So you might want to try practicing like that. Also, just shifting from B to E. So I did it once in first position with 1, 4, 1, 4, 4, 1, and then 1, 1, 1, 1. So it's really important to have your destination note in your ear even before you play that. Okay, so going on to measure 2, you can hold your first finger. Oh, sorry, I meant measure 3. You can use your first finger as an anchor to help you maintain your hand frame. So that would be. And then right here. So right here, you want to hold your first finger to maintain that frame. You don't have to hold that down, but if you feel like that helps your intonation process, please use that. It's really good to have anchors or strong fingers that you feel really comfortable with your hand frame. I feel like that's how I developed my hand frame there. I felt like some fingers felt more confident than others when I was learning and adjusting that. And start, if you only have one finger that you feel really confident with, start with that, and you'll gradually get other fingers that feel more and more comfortable in the frame that you're creating. Now, moving to measure 7, I feel like these shifts are really nice when you shift from the A sharp with the 3rd finger to the 1st finger, because you're doing a lot of replacement shifts. There are a lot of etudes out there that ask for a replacement finger shift. So so my 3rd finger is going to get replaced by the 1st, and you see that it's lining up to take its place. Also, do you know if the students can see me demonstrating on the violin right now?
They can see you, but the screen, the piece is bigger, so I can take it off. All right, I can switch back and forth too.
Okay, that would be great. I just want to show them like how things are moving here. So like, yeah. So that's, you're kind of like caterpillaring up your way up there. Great. It's fine as if the music is up, just as long as they can see what this hand is doing. And then in measure 8, the 2nd beat. I don't know if you guys play video games, but I've heard the saying of beating something 110%. So you're going that extra mile. So something that you can do, I said that a part of this has to do with rests. I can't remember which of my friends told me this, but I thought it was so true. Rests are not for resting, they're for thinking. Or doing anything you can to prep yourself before whatever else is going to happen. So measure 8 ends with a rest, and then measure 9, we have piano, dolce, right? You can use that time to go from like a louder dynamic sound point, and then sneakily like go to a quieter sound point. So right? And you can get that into your process by stopping after setting, and then you'll slowly close that gap, and it'll get faster and faster, and then you will do it naturally, which is awesome when you get to that point. All right, so moving on, we talked about tenuto. Tenuto, you want to hold your notes for the full value, so that you want to hold that last note all the way. I kind of think of these as like upside down speed bumps. So you're applying pressure. I don't want to say pressure, but if you can see my bow tension, and then it kind of goes down, right? So you're kind of having these little moments that it goes like an upside down speed bump. So it would not sound like an up bow staccato. So it would not be like, it's not like that, but kind of like putting little dimples or little waves, little gentle waves in your bow articulation. All right, so going to measure 13. That shift might seem a little scary for you, but there's something great about that measure. It starts off with the C sharp, and that's going to be our anchor or like our guiding note for our finger. So playing from the measure before, the C sharp, played with the third finger. That ends up to be your guiding note. There you could hear it very, very tiny, right? So you're gonna make it obvious when you starting to practice it. And then shortening that gap. And then here again, rest. And here you want to stay in the upper half. And so on. All right. Would anyone like to demonstrate the up to that much?
Anybody? I'll take your skit. Donovan again.
All right.
Awesome. Donovan, were you ever able to find the music?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, I got you. I'm gonna put it on screen. Okay, I can zoom in on, where are you guys?
The beginning.
Okay, cool. Make it
Up to measure 20. Yep, that's everything.
It's kind of hard for me to see. I can't see this.
It's okay.
Can't make it much bigger than that.
It's okay. If
Let's try.
Huh?
Sorry, I make it worse. Okay.
Yeah, it's cool right here. It's good right here. It's good right here.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't see the rest.
oh, we're
Donovan,
almost there. So.
yeah, if you so if you take your video off and you put your phone on landscape, that might make it easier. I don't know.
Yeah, it is on landscape, but I just.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's okay.
All right. Thank you, Donovan. That was really awesome.
It was
so
good.
I was really impressed with your measure 13 and your shifts. So that C sharp, I know that you can hear that note where you want to go. So that's really part of the battle. I also noticed that you took out the trills, and that is totally fine. It lets me know that you're in the part of the development, that you're learning the etude, and that you're more focused on having rhythmic integrity than putting in the trills. So yeah, we can practice like that. Good, awesome, okay. I also want to say this etude seems more on than off. So a lot of times violinists play in a way that we're manipulating the bow to make it sound like it's really off when it's mostly really on. So that's really cool. So I encourage you guys to stay more on the string. So this brings us to the second section. The second section is in E minor, and the character changes, right? The first beginning is very, very easy going, expressive, and then we have a dolce section. But here, I think it's a little bit more grumpy, or asking for something. So because of that, and also it's the first, like we have a forte, we start with a forte section, we want to use a lot of bow. So I would be using a lot of whole bow for a lot of these passages. And here, set your bow at the frog. Set. So we set it so we have a really clear enunciation of that last little 16th note. Set. Okay, so right here, there's a lot of other juicy good things that are happening. So in measure 27, where it has that piano, this kind of totally reminded me of Shradiak Etude number 4, which deals with string crossings, and we can get to that hopefully if we have enough time. But there we're rolling between two strings, the E string and the A string. So you want to find a sounding point that you're in between those two strings. So you can easily access those two strings with a minimal amount of effort and movement. Okay, and then we have that etude all the way up to that high B. So reaching that high B, lucky for us, it can also be a harmonic. So if you want to practice it, first getting the harmonic and then putting your finger pressure down and then doing it for real, not as a harmonic, that could help you. Something that's nice about shifting with harmonics is that we have a feather-like touch to play the harmonic. So that kind of encourages us to have a feather-like touch when we're shifting. And so that could really help. And that, just knowing that that is also a big stretch extension for your pinky. You have a fourth extension there. All right, so moving on to the next line, we have a turn. It's that squiggly thing, and I wrote it out on a handwritten staff paper if you want to see it written out instead of the turn. So you can practice it slowly and slow it even more down. Oh, and I should say also, if you want to practice it first without the turn to just get the rhythm, that's really great. really feel that anchored in your body and your ear when those 16th notes appear. Da dee da dum. And then doing that turn slowly. I felt like a turn was kind of a mystery for me in the beginning because you kind of just pick that up as you go and learn. So I've written it out so you can unveil the mystery of that. All right, so moving to the last line of this section, there's a lot of chromatics, lots of chromatics. It could sound a little hairy as you're going through them. Go through them with patience, and if you have to take one measure at a time, just take one measure at a time. So I was trying to think of an analogy for this. I don't know if you guys know what the transformers are, but they could look like trucks and then they transform into a robot. But there's a period that like they're transforming. I cannot believe I'm making a Transformers analogy with chromatics, but they're transforming specifically from a vehicle into like a super robot, okay? And there's a specific way in that they do it. But I want you to think that like you have a clear hand frame and you know you're also not shifting. So I'm not so sure about that analogy, but you want to be intentional about where you're putting your fingers down. And you want to be intentional about the spacing between your fingers. So the spacing between your fingers also correlates to the spacing of the notes. So going to like measure 39 right there. You can also do it separate if that helps you. Right, that D sharp, use that G as a guiding note for your hand frame. And the fourth finger is right beside the third. That's a compression. Sorry. So in that place, the third finger is key. Here, keep that third down. And again, in that measure, I would say the third finger is also another like strong finger that you want clearly there. If you hold it down, a lot of the notes will be able to find its way around it. I would say keep the first and the third finger down in that measure, because the two will get next to the first and the four will get next to the third. All right, so we're going along. The next passage is here. We've seen that before. Classical music repeats a lot. But I want to jump down to the last 3 lines because that's new. That's like a little coda at the end that Mazas wanted to end this etude with. When you're shifting, so at that dolce place where it says new, that's like a new section that we haven't seen before, right? When you're shifting, again, if you can hear it in your ear, that's really great. If you can't hear it in your ear yet, try practicing it in first position until it's in your ear and you know where you want to go. So you can do. And that's how you can practice that. Now, as we get higher, we get even higher on the second last line, the second last measure. If you do not feel comfortable up there in that octave, you can take that fingering and notes down an octave, and that could really help you there. So that would be. So that you can do that on the A string. That could help if you feel stronger in third position there. I know that this is not a big detail, but it's also kind of a big detail. Everyone's fingernail grows kind of in a different way. But I know that especially when I'm shifting, is high up, I want my fingers trimmed really neatly down to the finger. So I don't know if you can see my fingers, but I have no white part on my fingernails. If you have fingernails and you're shifting up there, your hand position and frame is changed. Just like when you see people with long nails and they're typing on a keyboard, they type like this as opposed to like this. And same thing with playing with piano. You don't want long fingernails when you play the piano. It changes how you are. I thought about this when I was riding my bike today. I usually wear running shoes, but today I wore flip-flops, and running shoes have a higher sole. And I thought that I had shrunk, but I realized I was just wearing flip-flops. So you want things to be as consistent as you can and keep your target as consistent as you can. The last thing I want to talk about is at the last line. So the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the last 5 measures. Again, these are great because they're harmonics. You're just going to have to finger memorize that high E, but the B is back to where we want to be. And here we can shimmy back down to the frog for the pits. And set the bow. And set the bow. It has a little hairpin on the last note, so you can increase volume and warmth a little bit with some vibrato and let it go and relax. So it's important before the last 2 notes, you want to set your bow. Whenever you have a rest with a note following after it, you want to always set your bow so you have good grip there. One last thing I want to say quickly about the chords. You want to start together. That's the goal. You want to start together. If you're having a hard time starting together, just be honest with yourself and practice that. Here we're at a piano dynamic. You can kind of feel, you can definitely feel the strings between your bows. Maybe you want to start with like the lower one and gently get to the next one. And slowly close that gap so you find out exactly what angle you have to be at to start that. And yeah, that would really help. Lolly, do we have time for a short little thing also?
Sure.
Speaking of chords, we usually often have like very powerful chords at the end, but this one's kind of like, it ends kind of like a lullaby, like good night or something like that. But when you play a chord and it's like, I often see students spending, and then we don't have enough bow. You can practice that by practicing breaking up the chord, or so it's like an iceberg. You want to see just a little bit on the frog for the lower notes. So I'm using a slow and heavy dense bow. Slow and heavy. So I have enough to hold that out. So you can break that up and start it slow and then slowly close the gap and play it in real time as you would like. So I hope all of these things were helpful for you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys all for coming, and thank you, Grace, for doing this class, and thanks, Donovan, for playing. If any of you guys are all panelists, if any of you have any questions you want to ask Grace real quick in her last class, feel free to unmute yourself and ask her. I made the etude a little bigger, so if you're watching this on home at YouTube at home, you can like, screenshot it and follow along in the class. Yeah, this is part 4 of Grace's series, Advanced Scales and Techniques for Advanced Violin. And all these classes will be on YouTube for everyone to see. It's open to the public, and we have lots of other classes coming up. This class is part of our online masterclass series, sponsored by the Chestnut Family Foundation. We've also got a ton of classes coming up at College Symposium, so about what it's going to be like to be a college music major, audition preparation. We've got a ton of classes this week. You can find all the information about these classes on our Facebook page and through our email blast. So you can find all that information there. Yeah, but thank you all for coming to the class. I forgot to show the Transformers, since you were talking about Transformers. I wanted to show it. But thank you, Grace, for doing this class. And yeah, it's been a joy to watch our AMP students learn with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ollie, and the AMP students. Thank you for putting this all together.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone who's watching. Does anyone have any final thoughts, questions? Okay, that's cool. You can send us emails. But thank you all for joining, and hope you guys have a great day. Thanks, Grace.
Thank you, Ollie. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.